everybody. My guest today on the QR podcast is Paul Holland. Paul is one of my closest friends in the testing business. We've kind of worked, taught, and spent some time in the barrel with each other over the years. Paul is an expert at transforming how organizations test to be more efficient, valuable to stakeholders, and finding important bugs fast. A good skill to have. He's actually legally allowed to work in 3 countries. So he has built and led test teams all over the planet, and in my opinion, is probably the best hands-on test director I've ever worked with. So, Paul, welcome to the QR podcast.
Thank you. I am very glad to be here.
Yeah. So
And
my Go
nope,
ahead.
go ahead. No, I was no, that's fine. I was I was I was just going to say that I'm glad to be here to share some of my knowledge and also potentially see if anybody's looking for a director of test engineering because
Let's
I
get
am at
straight into it there.
straight into it right there. My current contract is ending in 3 or 4 weeks, so uh, I will likely be available.
Cool. Well, we'll talk about what you're doing and how to get a hold of you at the end there. So, but what I want to really get to is my first important question for you is, when we work together, what did you love most about me being your boss?
Wow. I love that you totally left me alone and allowed me to do what I thought was
You're
the right
being
thing to
very
do.
nice right now.
You were, no, okay. I'm going to be, even though that was a gratuitous question, you were one of the best people I've ever worked for. The environment was fantastic. As long as people were doing the job, you let us do the job. You listened to people who were wanting to make changes or make suggestions. You wouldn't always implement them, but you'd always listen. You made it super fun to work with, and you are the only person I've ever worked with at any job who's curses more than I do. So,
Well, I wasn't
but I,
actually
as
fi- I
I
wasn't
don't
actually
curse as
fishing
much
for a
anymore.
compliment, but I'll take all that. First real question. All right.
Oh, that wasn't a real
No, that
question.
was not a
Oh,
real question. Do
wait, I
you
have a question for you. What was the best thing about having me being your head of testing when I was working for you? There you
the
go.
I mean, other than all the wonderful compliments I paid you at the beginning, I think my favorite thing about, well, working with you or as a test director.
Let's go with both.
Because I would say, and like I said at the beginning, I think you're probably the best hands-on test director that I've ever worked with. And I think it's super important for people to be able to do the job that they're working with people doing. And so many people in, like, you can actually test. I've seen you do it. You can actually test software. You do actually test software. You know how to do it.
I am doing
And
that on my contract right now.
yes, and so many people in management, I think there's 2 types of people in testing that are in management. There's either people who just want to be managers of managers. So they've been done testing for a little bit and they just want to manage other people and they think, "Oh, this is how I get ahead." And there's all sorts of stuff about the testing world that's BS that makes people want to do that, incentivizes the kind of managers of managers. And then there's the other folks who have no clue how to test at all. They've never they've come through development track or project management or something, and they have no clue how testing actually works, and they somehow inherit testing or they get stuck with it, and can't actually test themselves. So like and I think the people that I've seen working with you really respect that, and either laterally or the teams that you've led, you actually can muck in and can actually test software. And so many people in our business can't. So that was probably my favorite thing about you. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep. So I guess another question for you is, you've been working in this, I mean, you're famously older than me. So
I've been in the field for 30 years and this is my third career.
yeah.
So
Do you think, like, I have my own opinion on this, but do you think the testing industry has gotten any better over the course of your career?
No, every so often I get a glimmer of hope. Uh, in the late 20s, 2000s, just before 2010, it looked like there might be a shift away from outsourcing everything to the cheapest bidder and commoditizing the crap out of testing. And then the outsourcing everything got replaced with no code tools and let's
Mm,
automate everything. And then that went through its paces and people tried it and then they totally didn't work and they started hiring testers back. And and then just as that seemed to be sorting itself out, and again, testing seemed to be starting to recover, the whole AI debacle came along and is still obviously with us. And it's no, it's probably the first. I started in '95. Um, the um, the first 5 to 10 years was probably the the best time of testing because we weren't outsourcing everything. The tools weren't taking over. We were using tools. We
right.
weren't being replaced by tools. But as I said, the outsourcing everything first, then tools replacing everybody, um, and then AI replacing everybody. No, it's not getting better. But the AI one, I have a feeling that soon, I don't know what that means, 6 months, maybe a year, the the honeymoon seems to be starting to die. The
Mm,
overall opinion of people when they hear, "Hey, get this product, it comes with AI." Most people I know who hear that go, "Oh, well, then I'm not buying it."
right.
So it's the glamour period seems to be starting to wane, and the fact that literally everything that an LLM, generative AI creates is a hallucination. It makes up everything based on numerical probabilities. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't understand anything. It just generates stuff based on probabilities. Most of it is okay. A lot of it isn't.
Right.
And having testers who can understand it and use it to do things, putting barriers around it so that it's not damaging people,
Mm.
or companies or customers, but instead it's being used to augment like how it should be used. I think that the testers are going to be in the best shape to be able to, I guess, be that barrier and to be the voice of reason and say, we can't be replaced with something that makes that many mistakes.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And I think like from what I've seen is that the people who are probably most at risk in the AI world of testing are test engineers and people who don't know how to actually test, who don't know
Oh, for
about
sure.
because there's a law of diminishing returns on trying to account to infinity, and that's what I see a lot of the approaches being in trying to test these things. They're incredibly difficult to test, and if you don't know what you're doing, your whole approach is going to literally inject a lot of risk into your business. If you don't know how to, manage risk through testing, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of, false sense of security. And I want to get your opinion on this as well, because like I think part of the reason why testing hasn't gotten any better, or the testing business hasn't gotten any better, one of the reasons is the idea of quality. I felt like when I started in this business, like people cared about putting a quality product out. And I don't feel the same way anymore. I think people want to put something out and then
Yeah.
they'll fix it later. I mean, why, and that's why it still kind of sucks. I mean, why, or it hasn't gotten better. You're kind of
Yeah.
running uphill. What's your view on that?
I remember, like, let's go back to, uh, probably 10 years ago and earlier. If If you had spent money on software and it didn't work, you would be surprised. If you found a glaring issue, bug, defect, whatever you want to call it, you would be, whoa, that's like, wow, that's bad. This
Mm,
shouldn't be happening. Now, if I don't see something bad in a piece of software that I'm using, not even testing, the amount of care that I feel I need to take whenever I'm using software for something important
mm,
is stupid. Like
mm.
I double check everything instead of it's like, oh, you accidentally put a character in this thing that only takes numbers. That makes me nervous.
Yeah.
I was testing something at a client's, and I noticed there was not an input constraint on a value that it was looking for the port. So, colon 8080, the port 8080.
Mm,
Ports have a very, very small finite number of what their maximum is. And I was able to put in like a 20, 30 character digit port number, which clearly is not a valid port number. Why is it letting me put in that many? And I very hesitantly clicked on save because I was scared that it was going to overflow in the database into something else. And oh my God, you've now corrupted the database for everybody. What have you done? So I did save it because I was curious if it would save the whole thing or if it would truncate it. It saved the whole thing. What the
hmm.
hell? But anyway, it made no sense to me that I shouldn't feel scared. I should say this confidently won't cause a problem because everyone's thought of it, but nobody's thought of anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
that's
that's another thing.
what you're just talking about there is like you doing that in your personal life is like why like there's some people who are just dyed in the wool testers.
Yeah,
They're just like
I know.
constantly messing with stuff and looking for those things. And it's
I, I do.
it's like this goddamn tester. I always whenever they find a problem like that, I'm like, oh my fucking testers. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like
why
it's
did you put so many characters in? Because you
yes.
didn't stop me.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
have you ever not pasted 2 pages of a Word document in as your password? I
Yeah.
have. Anyway,
But I
it
think like
just
that skill you're talking about there, which is like, there's an you intuitively go towards that, but then also you develop the skills around how to define what that test was, explore it, all those. I just think that we've lost a lot of that. And it's just with this massive 20-year push to try and automate all the testing has really driven down the skill base. And so to me, I view that as a positive as well with the kind of changes in the technology landscape with AI right now. People who know what they're doing are going to be in high demand.
yeah.
Because I think some of this stuff hasn't been adjudicated in the public opinion or court yet around how bad
Yeah,
some of these systems can be. And once they are, I think there's going to be a real demand for that.
yeah. It honestly baffles me that people who are pushing for lots of automation, many of them believe that that is going to replace human testers.
Mm,
And it what it does is it gives you rapid feedback. But the feedback it gives you is a sliver of what a human will give you because unless you've spent decades creating your automation and checking everything on the page, a UI that I was testing recently, uh, when I clicked on something, an element turned orange and stayed orange. Who would have written automation to check that this element went to orange and stayed orange? Nobody. They would have checked that the result of the click that you did happened somewhere else. It was, pushing something around. So you check, hey, did it arrive where it was going? Yes, it did.
mm,
Perfect. That passed. Meanwhile, you have this permanently orange instead of a green widget on your page. What? Why is that here? How is
mm.
how is this not going to annoy the crap out of everybody? Everything that should be green, now one of the things is orange. Why? And automation isn't going to find that. And if it does, it means somebody spent time automating that, oh, we know that this could turn orange and stay orange. But once you know that that's going to happen, the chances of it happening are minuscule. So writing automation to make sure the bugs don't come back. It's kind of
Right.
like James Bach once said, it's like buying a zoo and fixing the doors on the enclosures that the animals broke open and escaped out of. Oh, I'm going to go fix that door. Well, why don't you go look at the doors that they haven't broken yet and see,
Right.
or they don't know if they're broken, and actually stop them from escaping instead of essentially allowing your customers to find all your bugs and then saying, oh, yeah, sorry, we didn't find that bug. We'll fix that bug.
Mm.
And then we'll put a test in to make sure it never comes back. Why would
Yeah.
it come back? Are your CM controls that crappy that you're going to get bugs reintroduced? Many companies they are, but
Well,
anyway.
yeah. I mean, so I'm giving a talk next year at Test Automation Days, and without giving too much away on the topic, it's a bit on the kind of lack of ROI on automation over the last, 20 plus years or whatever. And I think they've really kind of sown the seeds. That whole test engineering community has kind of sowed the seeds of their own demise a little bit with autonomous testing platforms or self-healing code or any of those things that are basically trying to get rid of the test engineer role. Because what a little bit what you're talking about there to me is this like just sea of test automation that people build, and with a caretaker mentality of like, I'm just writing this stuff, I'm not going to have to maintain it. They can't, you don't always know what it's doing, and it's poorly constructed and not tied to a lot of workflows a lot, so it's like very difficult to kind of figure out what you're getting for all that.
Yeah,
And there's the volumetrics of it. Oh, well, we've run, 10,000 tests. Like that sounds good. You know what I mean? Like, is it? I don't know.
it's a number. It's a big number.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
no. So when you're,
So
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna add on to that. The I forgot what I was gonna say. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if you can hear I'm in the UK, so I don't know if you can hear the Guy Fawkes fireworks going off outside my house right now. Very poorly timed, but there's a load going off at the park where
I
I'm at.
cannot hear it, so that's probably a good sign.
Good, good. All right, cool. So moving on a little bit I wanted to talk about, you come in and get parachuted into companies that are having problems, or you're leading up a new project, and so kind of the whole idea of, you know, fixing a test strategy or fixing a quality program or testing. When you come in to kind of like pick up a new project, what are some of the heuristics that you're looking for a company that like what's how can you tell what some areas what they're getting it right? Like what are you looking for when you come into a new place?
Wow, that's a good question. I like that question. Well, the first time I did this, you and I did it together
Mm,
for a customer at the company that we worked at when we were working together,
yeah, New
and
York.
in New York, and that was eye-opening for me. I had already tried to fix the testing at when I worked back at Alcatel-Lucent, which no longer exists. In my little tiny area, we stopped doing stupid automation. We replaced a 47-hour long piece of automation with something that ran in 2.5 hours. And we did a whole bunch of really good things to improve the stuff that was bad. There was documents that we would create that would literally take one person a week to create the document that no customer ever asked for. So what I started to realize when you and I started to work together and we went into companies, that it wasn't a unique thing, that there's waste, there's
Mm,
inefficiencies, there's things that, oh my God, that's really clever. I like what you're doing there. That seems to make sense. And so the things that I do when I go in and I analyze a particular customer is I start with interviewing, and I interview the developers, I interview the testers, I interview the product owners. If there are project managers, I interview them too. Often the directors and managers, whatever levels. If possible, interviewing the customer support people, seeing where their pain points are. And what I'm looking for through all that is I'm looking for what is slowing them down,
right.
uh, what are the bad things that are happening? Like, have they had major test escapes that have gone out into the field and caused the company harm or their customers harm? And and then once I gather that information, usually takes 1 to 2 weeks, then I write up a report and I make suggestions on how they can repair those inefficiencies. The one of the recent companies that I went to, I can't remember the number of recommendations I had. It was around 15, might have been 18. It was a fairly large number of recommendations. And in a meeting with the CTO, she said, asked me a challenging question about the cost of one of the recommendations. And so I rather defensively, apparently, started to defend the why I had recommended it. And she immediately cut me off and said, Paul, we're not questioning it. We're just looking as to how much it's going to cost. You're the expert. We're implementing all of your recommendations. And my jaw literally must have dropped right open because no one has ever done that before. Usually my recommendations, like
What, no
for one
one's
of the
ever
customers,
called you an expert before, or no one's
I get that a lot. No, I'm just, but no, it was that every recommendation was accepted
yeah,
was strange because usually some of them are painful. Like one of the recommendations that wasn't picked up by somebody that we did together, or it might have been one that I did on my own, was uh, that I recommended that they get rid of all of their current automation. It was
right.
literally providing them no value, none. It was taking 13 people in a foreign country to execute it, and they could only execute 2 iterations of all their automations once a month. So it took 2 weeks for
Yeah.
13 people to execute this automation. And on average, those 13 people raised 6 defects a month. I tested it with their test lead. I tested the exact same stuff this automation was running against, and we found 6 defects in half an hour. So two of us, so that's 1 person hour. We found 6 defects, and 4 of them were critical
Yeah.
or major. They were essentially showstoppers. 4 of the 6 were deemed, oh my God, we have to go fix these before we do
Right,
any
right.
other releases. And that was in an hour. And I was saying, why are you running all that automation? It makes no sense. It's not helping you. It's not finding
Because
anything.
it gets that, it's that false sense of security that if we keep running this
That's
thing, that
that's
it
why they
means
wouldn't get rid of
something.
it. They said
Yeah.
because management wants that sense of security. And I
Hmm.
said they are literally holding on to a blanket while there's a nuclear explosion happening. The
Yeah,
blanket
yeah.
is not helping them,
People
but it
always
makes
make
them
this
feel
argument
better.
that it's like sunken cost bias or whatever, and I'm like, it's fear. You know what I mean? Is one what people don't they run those things forever or let them grow into gigantic monstrosities of code
Yeah,
and
2 weeks. two
yeah,
weeks to go through it. And
yeah,
then it was crazy. Like
yeah.
they could have written whole anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, no, I mean you're exactly, and see, this ties into what I was saying earlier. But I think like test engineers are in trouble in the next couple years because if autonomous test platforms that can, if you deleted that automation pack and could rebuild it in a week using agents or MCP or like, hey, look, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
but you could get transparency over it. You could get all the instrumentation, everything you wanted without having, and could rebuild it quickly. Why wouldn't you do that?
right. I would strongly recommend they redo it. I would also strongly recommend they do it without using AI generating code because I've
Yeah, but
never
you get
had
you get my
AI
point
generate
though,
good
right?
code.
It's like all that legacy stuff, if you could just delete and replace and rebuild it
Yeah,
quickly,
there are
that's
so
where I see
many
that going.
there are so many like robot framework
Mm,
and Python and Playwright. That's what I'm currently using right now, and I'm writing keywords in Python that I'm adding into the robot framework library for to work with Flutter. By the
mm.
way, if you've ever worked with Flutter, that's probably why you don't have any hair. Flutter is stupid as far as automation goes. It's great for what they're using it for,
Thanks, pal.
but it was clearly never designed for automation. And even when you turn on the ability to see elements, it's still a pain in the ass. Every
Yeah.
single ID is dynamically generated and changes if you sneeze. So you
Oh,
can't
good
use
grief.
the IDs. It's everything is
See,
just
why
dumb.
can't the automation community sort that stuff out? It just drives me bananas because every time I hear this, it's been the same story since, I was doing some research the other day. I think it was 1982 Windrunner was created. And the whole object handling and everything else has maybe gotten mildly better since then. You know what I mean? It's
Maybe.
like slightly better.
Yeah.
Um, I was actually thinking about you the other day because I was making a recommendation to did a review, and one of my recommendations was like really pointedly, these people should be removed from the project. That there's just like not that meant you should be, but like that's the type of recommendation we would have made is
Oh,
like
I that's good. I thought you meant I thought of when I removed you from a project.
no,
No, which
no.
you
No, the
remember.
recommendation was
Yeah.
not to remove Paul from the project. It was, remove other people, like
Yeah.
actually naming names of like these people are because some folks just get so over their skis with trying to prove that they're right. They can't objectively make decisions about a project anymore. And I think they just, by essence of them being around, become a risk to the project because
Yeah.
they can't see
Net
it.
benefit negative. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough one to fix, and I think if you could just move these, they didn't cut deep enough. They moved some of them out, but they didn't cut deep enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Going back to the question about what are the things that I look at for or
mm,
recommend. One of the biggest ones is as I talk to the testers, I look at how are they testing. If I can, I'll pair test with them,
mm,
uh, which is shocking as quietly as I can. And I can easily go through a meeting without saying anything. No, I can't. Um, anyway, so
never seen
pair
that
test.
in my life.
I know. I've tried. I've tried to go through a meeting without speaking, and
People
I
are usually saying me that shy and retiring wallflower known as Paul Holland. That's
yes, if only he would speak up.
yes.
But the anyway, that so I look at how they're testing, the bugs that they're raising, what types of problems they're finding, and almost always I recommend training
Mm,
for the people. It's not a huge amount of training. It's not like, oh, go back to university and learn how to code or anything like that. It's just testing, like taking rapid software testing or something like that to think how things might fail instead of
yep.
confirmatory testing.
Yeah.
So
I got
it's
asked on because we were talking about the book earlier, and we'll get into that a little bit. But someone asked me like they were trying to get somebody in management. It was on LinkedIn. I'd posted the book was published, and somebody asked me like, what's the biggest selling point of RST or this book to try and get their team or whatever to buy it? And I thought about it for a little bit, and then my answer to the guy was, and is the mind shift change for testers is the biggest thing. You know what I mean?
yep,
Like really refocusing their jobs on not just being a functional confirmation bug finder into a risk management function. It is like I don't think you can stress it enough, like how I was gonna say brain damaged the certification and training programs are in the world that how much they hurt testers to think that's what their job is. And when you start to unwind that a little bit, you know what I mean? They really do change their mindset and they become so much more valuable to an organization if they know what their job is meant to be.
yeah, yeah. The biggest, yeah, I agree. It's a mindset change to go from uh, almost like what I'm thinking as I'm going through stuff that's important is, can I make this work?
Mm,
Uh, I really need this to work. I need my bank deposit to work, or I need my to be able to change my address on this stupid form. So when I'm using those forms, I'm doing as confirmatory happy path as I possibly can. And it becomes really apparent to me when I watch a lot of testers test is they'll get the information of how is this supposed to work from the team, and then they'll test it how it's supposed to work. But
Mm,
meanwhile, your customers never get that discussion as to how it's supposed to work. They're going to do anything crazy you can think of. And one of my favorite lines from the rapid software testing class is no user would do that,
mm,
is something that really means no user that I can think of that I
right.
like would do that on purpose. So, who aren't you thinking of? What might a good user do by mistake? And what might a malicious user do on purpose? So,
Yeah.
if you don't put the barriers in place to like input constraints or whatever, checking for SQL injections, all of those types of things, if you don't have those in place, they're going to get exploited by malicious users or accidentally exploited
Hmm.
by your users just making mistakes, like pasting 2 pages of a Word document into a password field.
So like where do you like you talked a little bit about like efficiencies and like how testers spend their time. What do you see like some organizations who genuinely want to have, good quality products or investing in testing? Like what do you see them
As
doing wrong?
inefficiencies.
Yeah, like what are they doing wrong? Like what like how could they get better, and what are you looking
So,
for to see that they're doing wrong?
yeah, so if they have a lot of people doing testing, so humans doing testing, a lot of times what they're doing wrong is documenting the steps,
Mm,
having very specific one, log in using this username and this password, expected result, you successfully log in. Two, click on the drop down menu, whatever. And having it having steps in the tests that are so specific that one, it creates a maintenance nightmare. Two, the creation of that test takes a long time, way longer than it would if you just said what the end result is. So if you're creating an insurance policy, as an example, something that I worked on a while ago, the uh, I can't remember the total number of pages that were in just a regular home policy that the broker had to fill in, but it was in the range of 10 to 12 pages
mm,
of information that needed to be filled in. And a lot of the things that we were testing weren't specifically about the policy. Some of it was, but if it wasn't, I just had a line that said, create a homeowner policy. That's it. And if it had to be specific, like, oh, it needs to be a tenant policy or it needs to be a homeowner or it needs to be whatever, then you specify that, but you leave the rest open.
mm,
So that way, every person who does it is going to create something slightly different. It exercises different elements of the program. And there's no maintenance required because creating a policy is always going to be how you create a policy.
mm,
So without having those detailed steps. And then the big argument, well, we need the steps so that anybody can execute the test. And that is a horrible idea because if you don't know how to use the system well enough to create a policy, you have no right testing that system because you have no knowledge if it's behaving itself correctly or not. And you might as well just have a smart 5-year-old doing it and just saying, look, I made it to the end.
yeah.
Happy days. There's no
I mean,
nothing at all.
using test scripts to learn, I've always felt that using test scripts to try and learn a system or be trained on a system is probably one of the worst things you could do. I mean, it's like you're not going
Right,
to really learn the system or learn how to use it or what its business intent is by a test script.
right. And so what I suggest in those cases is if you have Confluence or SharePoint or whatever your system of choice is to put knowledge somewhere, you create a page, a how-to page, we used to call them, so that if I say, I don't know how to create a policy, well, then you can have a page that says, here's ways to create a policy and here's your variables and what they mean. And you can create that page so someone can go and look at that, but
Mm,
it's in a single place. You can easily keep it updated. But again, you're not telling people what to click on and everything. You're just telling them what the options mean.
right, right.
Because again, if you don't know how to use the system, you shouldn't be testing on your own. You should be pair testing or you should be um, learning the system through some other means.
Yeah.
But pair
The
testing
value of the
is
information that comes out of that is so limited as well.
Right.
It's not particularly great. What's your view
And
on like how you
I
organize?
wait before you go on. And the second thing for automation, the problem that I see. So that was the problem is inefficiency in documentation, wasted time doing detailed scripts, and not exploring and being curious enough. Those are the biggest problems on human testing. On automation, the biggest problem I've noticed is that people write automation for their own team, for their own story that just get created. They'll create a new piece of automation, a new
Mm,
test. And when you do that, let's say you have 5 teams and each team does 10 stories a sprint, you have created 50 new tests every sprint.
mm,
And shortly, you're going to have tens of thousands of tests, and they're going to take hours and hours and hours and hours to run. I'm not talking unit tests. I'm talking the
right.
typically the um, UI level
Hmm.
tester created tests. And what I much prefer to do is get some scenarios end to end. So if we go back to an insurance policy, I would have the automation go through, oh, here's a homeowner's policy and here's the variables and the pages, the things that we test in that.
Yeah.
And now here's a tenant policy. And the whole thing goes all the way through, including then putting in a claim and doing everything else. Because otherwise, when you're testing claims, you got to go and create a policy anyway. So now you're just wasting time creating a something that you're not even testing. It's just
Right.
all set up. So I do a full end to end in the automation, and by doing that, that's how we got from 47 hours down to 2.5 hours at Alcatel-Lucent. At another customer, we went from 8 hours down to under half an hour by
Right.
just mushing it all into single tests. And by
Right.
doing that, your maintenance drops, the reliability goes way up because you're not stopping in the middle and having to clean up and then the next person sets it all up again. It's just way more efficient.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What was your question that
No,
you
I
were
was
going
gonna
to?
say like it's related to that a little bit because it made a little bit of a comeback for a while, and I'm not really sure exactly where it's at now. But this, I like how you organize testing in a company, like the whole idea of a test center of excellence, the TCOE, was starting to make a little bit of a comeback. It kind of died again. I mean, do you have a view on? I'm sure you have a view, but like, do you have a preference of like, should it be a separate organization? Should it be managed in the line? Like where? Like, I don't think there's an actual thing as agile testing, but like, do you like, in squads or, in sprint testing? What's your view on the organizational structure of testing? The best way to do it?
The I It totally depends on the company. I've seen companies where there's a testing center of excellence that works, and I've seen companies where that would be a horrible idea. Um, it's I hate to do the it depends, but it depends. So
Oh, you're brushing off your context-driven testing bona fides there, huh?
yeah. But if if there's an area of expertise that is required to do something, it can often, and that something perhaps is spread across a bunch of different teams or different projects. So let's say, as an example, there's a shared database, and yet there's 5 different projects who are all sharing the same database. It to me would make sense that you would likely have a database team that looks after the database itself and the testing of the database and sort of would control the how that database is written to, saved, all crud happening with the database would go through a team of experts. When I was at Alcatel-Lucent, my team was the physical layer team on DSL. Nobody else knew the physical layer at all because it was specific and complicated, and it would take somebody joining my team would literally be 3 months before they were any use to me. 3 months of pair testing. So it made sense that we had a dedicated team that had that knowledge because it was a
Mm,
huge, deep well, but nobody else really needed it. If they had a problem like, hey, this doesn't seem to be working, your team might be able to help. My team would go over and help out.
yeah.
So in those situations it makes sense. But if you're at a company that has like one or two product lines and they're pretty basic, then why would you need a testing center of excellence?
Yeah,
It I,
I think
I don't
so.
know.
So my view on that is I don't really care about the org structure across the company. With the one thing I've probably become more convinced of that I'm right about is that it absolutely needs an outside reporting line. I have just seen time and time again testers getting bullied, undermined, their message not getting through to the right level if they don't report into leadership. If you're gonna invest in a test person team approach, it needs to
Yeah,
give unfiltered info to project or program leadership. That's the one thing that like where I see things are starting to go wrong or a heuristic for me when I review an org that one of the first things I always look at comp first, like how are people being rewarded because that's what people do. And the next one is like who do they report to? Um,
yeah.
because
Yeah, I
that's
saw a big problem with the reporting too. That actually back when uh it might have been, that doesn't matter where it was. Uh we had a COO who was convinced that we were not going to be late
mm,
on this one particular massive feature. And we were screaming at the testing level that this is not going to be on time. We are so like we are nowhere close to ready. And that report kept going up through. I was the director and I had a VP of testing, and she would be passing that information up to the COO who she reported to, and it ended there. He didn't pass it up to the CEOs. So meanwhile, the CEOs were talking to customers saying, "Yep,
mm,
that feature's coming. It'll be ready next month." And then 2 weeks before release, the COO mentioned to the CEOs that no, we're not going to be ready. We're going to be 2 months late or whatever the hell. I don't remember the number, but it was late. And it
right.
wasn't like, oh, we're going to be a week late. It was like we were way late. He got fired that day. And when yeah, I'm not kidding. I've never seen CEOs act so quickly with a C-level executive. They literally fired him. He was escorted out of the building,
Good
and
grief.
and yeah, and they had an all-staff meeting the next morning, and the one of the two co-CEOs said probably the best thing I've ever heard a CEO say with respect to testing, even though it wasn't directed at testing. He said, "Bad news doesn't get better with age."
Hmm,
And
I like that.
it is. It's great. It was a fantastic thing to say, and that's what the COO had done was he had hidden the bad news until it was like the CEOs could have easily said 3 months earlier, "Oh, it doesn't look like we're going to be on time. It's a big feature.
Hmm.
We're working on." But you don't wait till 2 weeks before it's going out the door and then say, "Oh, by the way, I know you're expecting it in 2 weeks, but it'll be in 2 months instead."
Yeah.
That that just causes sales problems, customer dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, bad
That's all
news does
related to
not get
people
better with
not
age.
understanding what their role is in testing as well. That it's the information objectively reporting information,
Yes.
needs to be given, in my view, as undiluted as possible,
Yeah.
and as quickly as possible. But I think so many people in testing want to be friends with everybody, and they view giving bad news as Let me be clear. The, giving bad news as counterproductive to helping a release go out,
Right.
and that's part of their job is not to say no, but like here's what's going to happen if we do this, here's what I've observed, here's the risks, and that just some I think some people just have a hard time with that objectivity part of their job.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So there's something that the last time I taught RST, one of the people said, on the team I'm on now, I'm I'm I think they look at me as the enemy, as the person who is trying to stop them from being done.
Mm,
And I said, okay, well, there's two things that I think you can do in that case. One is when they do something good, make sure you tell them that as well. Because if the only information you're giving them is, I found a bug, I found a bug, I found a
yeah.
bug, your code sucks, they're not going to like talking to you. But if you are testing something and it's pleasantly surprising you, or the first time you do it, you can make it to the end without finding a bug. Tell them, say,
Yeah.
hey, this is great. I'm really impressed. I got through the end, and now I'm going to start hitting it harder. But first time through, it's things are looking good.
Yeah.
Make them feel better. Don't blow hot air up their ass for no reason. But if
Mm,
there's something that genuinely is working well, tell them it's genuinely working well, and let them know. And then the second thing is you try to need to let them know that your job is to make them look good.
mm,
If you catch the bugs before it goes out to the customers and our customers are happy, they look great. You're not the person they're trying to impress. You're the person that is trying to get others to be impressed by their code.
mm.
So that's if you can sort of get that message across to the developers that my job is to make you look good. In the meantime, I'm going to make you look bad, but that's just between us and that's
Yeah.
good. And then
And
everyone's going to say he knows what he's doing because his code
yeah.
doesn't get
And none
broken
of
in.
that has to do to me like this argument gets made about like, oh, well, you're just advocating to have testers when you might not actually need testers. I mean, like that doesn't mean like um everybody doesn't have a stake in quality. That doesn't mean developers shouldn't test their own code. That doesn't mean like people shouldn't be thinking about testability or any of that stuff. Having, independent testers are really valuable for certain parts and styles of testing or types of testing or, different industries, require it. So it's not like
It's
I
also a mindset.
yeah,
The test,
it really is, and it rubs me wrong when people just say like, "Oh, well, you're just advocating for testers because you're a tester," you know?
yeah. But if I've written code, I want to see that the code's working.
Mm,
So I'm going to prove that the code works. Yay, my code works. If I'm testing that code, I'm trying to prove how it might fail in ways that are important. So
hmm
it's a totally different approach to the code. And as a developer, when I write automation, I am totally blind to the stuff that I'm totally blind to. If I
hmm
thought about it, I would have written code to fix it. So, as an example, I'm currently writing this Python code, and something completely and utterly unexplainable happened that when I ran it on two of my three monitors, it worked, and I moved it to the third monitor and it stopped working. I don't know why, but I fixed it so that it no longer doesn't work on my third monitor. It's clearly something to do with weird flutter and scrolling and stuff, but had I was blind to that as a possible failure point. And
hmm
so when I saw the failure and I tried to figure out what caused it, but it was I didn't know to test for that. I was super lucky that it failed moving on to the third monitor. Just unfortunately was when I was trying to demo it, I demoed it on the monitor that I had never run it on before, and it failed in front of everybody. So that was kind of embarrassing. But the point is, I didn't know that I needed to test that,
Right.
but a tester would come in and do stuff that I'm not expecting or my code isn't expecting, and be able to
Yeah.
uh, make the code more robust once
Mm.
those bugs are fixed.
So
So
you
yeah,
mentioned RST, and I wanted to segue into. I know obviously the book just came out, the Taking Testing Seriously, the RST way, and we both contributed to that. And I read your chapter the other night, and you talk about something that is like,
bedtime reading.
yes, absolutely. I could not get to sleep, and so I picked up the
Yeah,
book and said,
I
"Where's
read
Paul's
your chapter
chapter?"
3 nights in a row and I finally finished it. Yeah.
Cured my insomnia. So no, but I was actually going to give you a compliment because I think it's actually one
Oh,
of the mo a very practical approach to what is a real problem, which is if people haven't read it yet or don't get their hands on on a copy, which they seem to be in pretty high demand right now. You wrote about test reporting and actionable test reporting, which is still one of the biggest problems in testing, no matter how much is done. Why is test reporting so bad, and why does everybody just still use Excel?
Actually, I'm pleased when people are using Excel. It means they're not using a test management tool that generates very pretty and yet useless charts and metrics.
Mm.
So actionable test reporting involves, in my mind, no metrics. And people say no metrics. Well, actually, for the first time, I think it was Matt Heuser asked me, he said, "You keep saying you don't like metrics. Well, you have to use some metrics. What are the metrics that you actually use?" And so I said, "Well, I have a list of bugs." And he goes, "Not a metric." I went, "Oh, yeah." Um, I put in a mind map that shows coverage, test coverage, still not a metric, right?
Mm.
And then I realized that in all of my test reports, I don't use metrics at all. I have used metrics in the past when I have to. And by that, I mean, I'm told to or I'll get fired. So, okay, I'll give you your test metric, but I'm also going to give you useful information because the metric itself is not useful. And like there's one example that I do in a full day tutorial called Your Test Reports Suck, where it shows two projects at the beginning
Very
and one
creative,
has
very creative name for your class.
yeah. And so it shows project A with 10,000 test cases and 99% pass rate and only one critical bug, and project B, which has like 100 tests and about a 60% pass rate and five critical bugs. Which one's in better shape? They're of equal size and complexity and progression through the development. And using those metrics, it sounds like project A is in way better shape. But when you get the story, the one critical bug that Project A has is going to involve re-architecturing the system and probably a database change, and it's going to delay them by about a month. While Project B, the six critical bugs, they've already investigated them. They think they can fix them pretty quickly. They're pretty minor changes, and they're pretty confident they're going to be wrapped up in on time in like a week.
Mm.
And that their tests, even though they only have 100, are cover the whole product and the way the feature is going to be used, while the one with 10,000 tests, it's just, click this button, pass,
Mm.
type this, pass. And so they have 10,000 little tiny steps. Anyway, so the point is those metrics, even though they sounded really impressive, don't tell you anything. So then what you need to talk about is what are the bugs? Give me a list of show-stopping bugs. I want every show-stopping bug in the test report. If there aren't any show-stopping bugs, which like we're about to release, we determined all these are acceptable releases, then a list of the important bugs that you've determined are acceptable. I like having a mind map, a product coverage outline or a release coverage outline, which I cover extensively in the book, which is essentially shows you the color coding of whether
I
you've tested it.
love a product coverage outline.
Yeah. Or the release coverage outline, which is what I
Yeah.
made up. But anyway, the, I mean, James made up product coverage outline. I named it because it was the test coverage outline is what he called it, and it anyway, it doesn't matter.
I don't care
So
who came up with the damn thing. I just say I like
oh,
them.
I do. Yeah, I know. And honestly, that's sort of the part that I latched onto probably about 6, 7 years ago. Actually, no, about 10 years ago now.
Mm.
And I made test reporting a thing that I excelled at because I noticed that it was something that needed to be done. So
I want to
having
stop you for
the
a second because I have a specific question about something you said in the book, right? So, and
uh-oh.
you've heard me and other people, I bang on about how um, your test approach can inject risk to your business. It can be a risk. If you're testing poorly, that is an actual risk to your business. You have talked about bad test reporting being quote unquote dangerous, right?
Yes.
Um, Talk me through like some of the elements of bad metrics, like what makes up a bad metric, and you talk about some of them in the book, but like what are those things of bad metrics, and why are like what kind of risks do
So
those things bring up to a business? Because I think there it people be surprised that a lot of the metrics in testing that are put out there are actually
are
pretty bad.
they are very bad.
Mm.
So I did a talk. Let's see if I can remember all of there's five, might be four things that in my mind make up, if any of these are true, it's a bad metric.
There's
So the
four. I
first
got them
one,
right in front of me, so it's unfair. It's a quiz.
score, four. I couldn't remember if it was four or five. So four. The first one is comparing elements of different sizes and treating them as one. So if you have a test case that takes 2 minutes to run or even 30 seconds to run, and a test case that takes 2 days to run, those are both one. And a
Mhm.
good friend of both of ours, Sue Finley, when she worked at a Canadian bank, she she got her test report in as the testing progressed for each release they were doing. And every release, I can't remember how long her testing lasted. I think it was about 4 weeks before they released, because you got to test banks. You can't just put out banking software without testing it. So they had this, and every release, they'd be way ahead of schedule as all the little tiny tests all got executed because they were easy, and they would go way up. And then with the average line, she'd say, "We're ahead of schedule, we're ahead of schedule," and then it would go beep, and it
Yeah,
would almost flatline, and they'd end up being a week or two late every time because
right.
the numbers of what was left were all the massive complicated tests that all took days to run, and all the 30-second tests all got done at the beginning.
Yeah,
So comparing another thing is bugs. I have two critical bugs. Okay, well, one of them requires re-architecting, the other one was a missed colon.
yeah,
It's like they're not the same, and you need to understand the effort required to fix it or to
yeah,
execute it. And effort is a much better thing to keep track of
yeah.
once it's been investigated and it's known.
Yeah,
So
fake defect normalization is a huge thing where they just the way they're categorized, and it creates so much confusion when they think, oh, well, we can't go live without any P1s, you know what I mean, or critical defects, and it just creates a mess.
I kind of agree with you. Shouldn't go live with a critical defect, but I also remember in telecom we would reclassify defects.
Yes.
Again, the company I work for doesn't exist, so I can say this, but we would have like three or four critical bugs, and we would reclassify them as major, do our report that we would send out to everybody, and then the next day they'd be back to critical. And going, why? This is
Isn't that
just
you
like
were
a
in the military? Isn't that called like green shifting or something like that? It's like
yeah,
the closer you get to
yeah,
the release date, the greener things look.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so comparing things of different sizes. If compensation is involved, so if essentially you're getting rewarded for raising bugs or writing tests or executing tests, you will meet the metric no matter how badly you do the job. And if you're getting compensated for executing a certain number of tests in a week, and one of your teammates comes up and says, "Hey, Keith, I'm totally stuck. You're the only person who can help me." And you're sitting there going, "I got to do 3 tests by the end of the day, or I'm not getting a paycheck tomorrow." You're not going to help the person. It's not the right thing for the company. You're going to
Mhm.
do the right thing for you. And so
I would
anytime
I would add to
compensation,
that, Paul, that like people are gonna I'm gonna get comments saying, "Oh, that doesn't happen." It happens all the time, and
and it
it is
doesn't,
endemic in
and it
testing.
may not
Even
happen
with
with
a
every single person might not do it, but in general, if you're a team of eight,
yep,
six or
it's
seven of
all
them are
over
going
the
to be doing
place.
that.
Absolutely, and that's why I
Everyone
always
is,
check at how people are comped when I start reviewing a program. I'm telling you, a program that I reviewed this year, same problem. How are you, comping people, and are they being rewarded for finding bugs? You know what I mean? Or
right.
how many tests they run?
Horrible. Both
2025.
of those are horrible metrics. So by person, so that one is sort of, if compensation is, sorry, I went right to compensation. Compensation just makes it worse. Anything that's, if you're measuring by person or by team, makes it a bad metric. So if
So
you're
like
looking at
competitive
number of,
networks.
correct, it makes
Yeah.
it competitive. So any X by team, X by release, X by whatever, if there's a buy and a time period or a unit, it's likely going to be bad, because people, as I said, will meet the metric no matter how badly they do it.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see. Remind me of the other ones because I can't remember.
The
My brain is jello.
gaming, if they're easy to
Oh,
game
easy to game. Yeah. Oh my God. So the percent pass rate is a horrible one for this. So
and still the
uh,
favorite and still the
it is
most
the
used.
favorite. If but when I so telecom the is a regulated industry, and to my knowledge, it's the only regulated industry that mentions a mandatory minimum pass rate. You need to have a 95% pass rate in telecom to release. Mandatory. And that's TL 9001, which is a North American stupid telecom standard. And the reason I say stupid telecom standard is having a 95% pass rate is the easiest thing to do. You just need to run more tests that are going to pass. So, oh no, we're at 91%. Well, and I'm not making this up. I wish I was. One project manager came to me because I was at 91%. That's why I picked that value. And he said, "Is there anything you can do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Can you run more tests so that you hit 95%?" And I said, "I could, but I'm not going to
Yeah,
because
right.
they're legitimate bugs and we're allowed to release. We just have to put in a
Right.
variance and sign it. I'll sign the variance. I don't care. I'll even write it up, but I'm not going to just game the metric
Yeah.
because the metric needs to mean something. And honestly, the 9% failures we have, nobody cares. And I'll make that clear in the variance that
Yeah.
they're they're like total edge cases that seriously aren't going to impact anybody, but they're legitimate failures and I want them captured. And by next release, they'll be all fixed because it's an external
Yeah.
chipset vendor that has to fix them.
That's like those big metric scorecards from vendors that I've never seen one that wasn't green across the board. They will just meet every metric, every, 100% test coverage, 100% automation, or whatever the line is, they'll be just above
Yeah.
it.
And the last one is giving you a false sense of security. And you just mentioned the biggest one, which is 100% coverage.
Mm,
Oh, we have 100% code coverage. You have a test that when you execute it, or when you execute that suite of tests, every line of code in your system gets run through the exercised, but it gets exercised maybe once and maybe with
right.
a value that it works with, but and maybe with just a value that is irrelevant. And after it goes through, the test gets rejected and everything else that it's done doesn't need to happen. But the code coverage metrics or requirement coverage metrics, or actually remind me requirements coverage metrics in a second. They're the only thing they're good for is if you expect to be at a value. So if
Right.
I
Right.
expect that I've written unit tests that should give me an 80% unit test coverage or code coverage with my unit tests, and I run it and I and I look and I go, holy crap, I'm only at 50%. What the hell did I miss?
Yeah.
That's helpful. Once you hit 80%, it's no longer a useful metric because it doesn't tell you how good the tests are that you're doing. They could be the world's most useless code tests. Like you don't know
Right.
the value of the test. You just know you've hit this number. But boy, Intel has 100% code coverage mandatory before they're allowed to release.
Yeah.
Does that make me want to buy Intel over AMD or Nvidia? No.
Yeah. I
Uh,
always say, like, when they're producing all those metrics, what what decisions have ever been made off of those
oh,
numbers?
decisions get made all the time based on metrics because people are comfortable with them. It's a
No, I
false
don't.
sense of
I
security.
disagree with you, Paul. They're not making a decision off of the metric. They're making the decision off of somebody telling them that it means something. Because the numbers itself doesn't mean anything. They just want to see that they don't understand how testing works, so they just want to see that a number is giving them a level of comfort that something's been done.
Yeah.
They don't actually point to that. Um, so I
And a company I worked at fairly recently, a VP would take my test reports and he would run Jira numbers and show up with percentages and all this stuff. And he would take the percentages to the board and they were making decisions based on the percentages. My job, I took it, was to make sure the percentages were an accurate reflection of the quality of the code. If the code was bad, I
Right.
tried to make sure that the numbers reflected bad quality, like, oh, 70% pass rate. That's bad enough that they're not going to release. And I had to make sure stuff like that was happening because it's crazy that they were making decisions based on uh, percentage of tests executed and percent pass rate. That's what they were making their decision on, despite me doing my best to say you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I
Sad.
always they were probably relying more on the story that you were giving them to wrap around those numbers than anything else. But
The VP was getting the story, and obviously, if I gave him a really bad story, he would pass the bad story along. But if it was just a meh story, we released way before we should have.
right.
But we had to release something for the board to not. It was a massive project. It was like a 2 year, 3 year project. We were a year late. They needed something out the door that did something. So we pushed something out the door that did something.
That's
And
never an
then,
environment where a bad decision would be made.
exactly. If we want to get any more money to finish this project, we need something out the door. Guess
Yeah.
what? Something went out the door.
So
But okay,
conversely to I because I
I
want to
want
ask
to,
you about like what is goes in a good test report? Like what do you think are like the core elements of a good test report?
I'm going to answer that in a second. I want to mention requirements
Oh
coverage
yeah.
first.
I forgot to remind you.
So the requirements coverage is probably the worst coverage metric because the written requirements are a sliver of the actual requirements of the product. So you have, I don't know, let's be really generous, 150 requirements that you've written out that the this thing that we've created needs to do all 150 of these things. There is probably at least another 200,000 things that that product is going to need to do that aren't written down. But boy, those 150 that you wrote out, you can do requirements traceability to those till the cows come home and you'll be very happy. But what about the other 20,000 that are implicit
Hmm.
or tacit that nobody even realizes are there?
Aren't
And an
written down or
example,
can't be written down.
it can't be written down. Like there's some that you just don't even know. Like I've had one bug where I moved the mouse onto the screen and I clicked, and every time I clicked on this one page, it would click like 20 or 50 pixels to the left of where I clicked. I have no idea how they even coded that, but they somehow managed to make it so that where you had the cursor wasn't where the browser thought the cursor was. And nobody wrote a requirement that the browser must think that the cursor is always where the
Right.
cursor is displayed on the screen. But guess what? When it didn't work, you had to like, oh, I know to click on this button, I got to slide over to just to the
Right.
right of the button and then click. No one's going to release that. And that's a requirement, but it's not written down. And
Right.
that's just one example of many, many. Anyway, what goes into a good test report? I started to say this earlier, but a list of bugs, showstoppers, if it's an interim report, if it's a final report, important bugs,
Mhm.
a mind map or a release coverage outline that shows what your test coverage is. If you want to include a second one that shows where the areas are, that's can be done as well. I've only done that a couple of times. Most of the time, the list of bugs is enough. A risk list, so things that you identified as a team as to what the risks were and what the status of those risks are, whether they've been mitigated or they're still open. An executive summary at the beginning, because if I give somebody, even though most of my test reports that I give in are in a PowerPoint format and they're only like 10 pages long and you know you can just quickly scroll through them, I still have an executive summary because most executives, I know when I had a particular co-CEO I worked for, he never read any of the shit that I sent him. Uh, but boy, would he read the executive summaries at the beginning and then say, yep, and then move on because that was all he needed to read. So, for those of you listening at home, Keith was the guy. But anyway, have an executive summary at the beginning that sort of summarizes the state and
Mm.
then having the risk list, the bugs, the test coverage, and any assumptions or questions that you still may have. I have a feeling I'm missing something I normally put in, but that's the most of what goes into the test reports that I
Yeah.
write.
And the reason why I would focus my energy on the executive summary or the status of the product is because that's the thing that gets paid. You don't know whose desk that's going to end up on or where that little
Right.
blurb is going to be there. So like, me, I'm always focusing on who in the business is going to be reading this. I that's super important because that is in a nutshell what the testing story is.
And make sure that everything that you report on, whether it's a defect or a risk or the executive summary, references back to the business importance. Is this going to
Yes.
cost us money? Is it going to harm our clients? Is it going to get us on the front page of the New York Times? All of those things need to be brought back um, to the state of the
Yeah.
business itself. How does this impact the business? Is it going to cost money? Is it going to cost reputation? Is it going to annoy customers?
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree with all that, and pragmatically as well, because you can't go around like everything's not
You,
a high level
you
risk.
jerk.
Yeah.
Boy, is Bob ever a bad developer. Look at all these stupid bugs. They're all Bob's fault.
Why are you picking on Bob?
He's a bad developer.
Um, so the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is again, I don't know if you have a particular model now, but I've I think part of your what I admire about you is again, like I said earlier, the kind of getting into the guts and you can actually test and do that work. So you've trained a lot of testers and well, mentoring to one side. I'm not sure you should be mentoring anyone, but
Wait. I'm just thinking of two words that end with the second word is off. Anyway, keep going.
I'm s- well, I was there's a word that gets thrown around a lot these days, which I think is I like better than mentoring, which is coaching. Which I think you probably do a lot of that. But do you have?
I
I mean,
do, but you kind of need to start with mentoring. Coaching involves a minimum level of skill of the person that you're coaching before coaching is going to be effective. So if the
yep,
person is new to testing, they need to be mentored. They need to be pair tested with, they need to be shown what to do. Once
yeah.
they have an idea and they've essentially
But see, so this is to
understand
be fair,
testing, then
this is where I think we disagree. So, like the words mentoring versus coaching, right? Because like I wouldn't view pair testing as a mentoring. Traditionally that's not really it's not an activity led type of thing. Mentoring is someone's coming to you for advice, you know what I mean? And it's all on them. What they like coaching is more, let me watch how you do things. Here's some training techniques. Here's some things you can work on. That type of
I
stuff.
was going with the way Vernon Richards talks about coaching, which is where uh, essentially I don't tell you anything. I ask you questions so you figure it out on your own. It's a really hard skill to do it well.
Yeah.
I am not that subtle. I really find it hard to not just say, "Why don't you do this?"
Yes.
Which is why I don't think I can coach. I have coached. The more skilled the person is, the easier it is to coach.
Yeah.
But that if we're just talking about training, I'm good at training. If we're talking about coaching, I'm okay at coaching, and if I particularly focus on it, I'm good at it. And then mentoring is, yeah, as far as people come to me for advice of, hey, what job should I apply for? What tool should I use? And just answering questions like that. Yeah, you're right. That's probably anyway. So
So
what's the
anyway, the point
question?
is helping people get better at testing. Let's just
I'm very good at helping people get better
abstracted.
at testing.
Yes, you are very good at that. Let's get the terminology aside. I'll have to follow up with Vernon because I totally disagree about his the definition of coaching, but and mentoring. But that's okay. That's all right. Vernon is
Don't no, it's only coaching. I don't know what his definition of mentoring is.
all right. All right. I'll take that up with him separately.
Fair enough.
So how do you approach it? So whatever you're helping someone get better at testing and that whole kind of coaching, mentoring, pair testing, how do you go about that? Do you have like a model, or do you just like sit down and start working through it, or like what are some skills that you feel like are actually, you know, teachable?
Um, so that's it's not an easy question. So the Uh, usually, just like when I'm figuring out a particular organization, I talk to the person. A lot of times, I'll have them test something fairly simple, and then just watch how they approach that, and then give them feedback on that, and then have them test
Right,
something slightly more challenging. So it's not necessarily um, pair testing or showing them how to test so much as and this comes down to how the rapid software testing course is taught itself is having them not do a good job
right.
and struggling and knowing that they're struggling and realizing I didn't do that well and sort of sitting with that and trying to figure out how could I have done that better and then showing them how they could have done it better. It's a so much more effective way of learning that's so much more memorable
Hmm,
than just saying, hey, if you're ever in this situation, do this thing. And if you're in this situation, do
right,
this other thing because you haven't failed, you haven't struggled. You're just thinking, oh, Paul said I should do this. And then when you get into that situation, you'll say, Paul said something. I can't even remember what it is, but I remember he said that I needed to think of something here, but because you haven't failed, it hasn't been ingrained as much.
right.
So it's going to sound like a sadist. People are going to come in and say, "Can you help me test better?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I need to watch you fail over and over and over again,
Well, I
and
mean,
then tell you how to do it
but if you're
better."
not failing, you're not learning anything. Do you know what I mean? There's
Right?
no reflection. There's no what did I do wrong? What can I do better? I don't. I think
Yeah.
that's the model for learning is
A,
is failing at things.
yeah. A lady at the last job actually created a slide for some of the training that I was doing there because um, uh, I didn't take it easy enough on the people who weren't testers. And the lady I was working with, my peer, she got a phone call from the ladies I was training's husband, said, "Why are you making my wife feel stupid?" And uh, so we added a slide because obviously the intention is not for you to feel stupid. So
Yes, of course not.
we added a slide that says learning by failure and explaining why and how that's so much better than learning by just, oh, you know, when you're doing long division, make sure you don't forget to move the decimal places or whatever. So
Yeah,
you need to fail to make it stick. And so we needed to tell people at this particular company that you're gonna fail. Don't take it personally. It's intentional so you can learn better. And
yeah,
then we stopped getting those phone calls. But
yeah. And I think that's probably a issue with this individual.
yeah,
I mean, I've personally seen you give lots of training classes and coach loads of folks, and that you've built
it's
long
it's a
lasting friendships with people out of the training classes that you've done. So I think it's
it's
probably down to the
it's the first
individual.
time I've ever gotten that feedback. Why am I
Yeah,
making someone feel stupid? I have almost made somebody cry once. Um, but
that was
it
me.
was yeah, I know, but you eventually got over it. No, that was way back, like 15 years ago when I was first starting to teach. Um, I I didn't hadn't learned to recognize that somebody was struggling too much and to back off and to help them out and let
Yeah,
them know they're doing well. Uh, but yeah, having people struggle, having people intentionally fail, and it's it's amazing. I just taught RST actually in the last month at a company, and the feedback from everybody was unanimously positive, saying that they learned a lot, not just on testing, but also on how they can use the critical critical thinking outside
Right.
of testing, and
It's an
I've had some
in-demand
people.
skill these days. Becoming a
Yeah.
lost art, I think, a little bit. I wanted to ask you one last thing is about because I feel like it's changed a bit the testing industry. Like I haven't been to cast in a while. I kind of felt like when I was starting to connect with the RST, you guys, and when I was at Barclays, over that 10 plus years ago, there was a different vibe in the testing community. And like, I get not everybody can take an RST class. They could buy the book, you know what I mean? Like, but like, is there any other community support that you would, align towards these days? Because I feel like it's shifted a little bit, and I don't really know as much. I mean, there's some conferences and things like that, but like the kind of peer conferences and things like that seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, yeah. The only peer conference I'm aware of that's still going on is actually the Spanish version of Whopper.
Okay.
Uh, it's been going fairly
Which is
well.
that's the reliability and performance engineering one, right?
Workshop on Performance and Reliability,
Right.
WOPR, which is as far as peer workshops go, it's the one that's had the most iterations run. Eric Pregler is responsible
Oh,
for
he is.
that.
Okay,
Without
still
him,
Eric's still running it.
Eric's still running it. We haven't had one since Uruguay, which is actually the one that spawned the Spanish one. The last one we had was in Uruguay. I know they are looking at maybe having one in Europe sometime next year, but it's been a while. But you're right. The peer conferences, which if you don't know, it's a facilitated discussion, invitation only workshop with usually 20 or fewer people on a particular theme, and then people stand up and present an experience report. You're not allowed to present theory or things that you should have done or things that you're thinking of doing in the future. You're just standing up and saying, this is what I had to do. This is, what I did, what my role was. And then people ask questions. It sounds lame. Whenever I explain it, people go, that sounds like it would be boring. Every single person who's gone through a 2 or 3 day workshop like that comes out saying, I've learned more in this
Mm,
workshop than I have in any other testing thing I've ever done in my whole life.
yeah.
And there was a ton of them at one point. There was What's It, which was workshop on teaching software testing. There was WET, the workshop on heuristic and exploratory testing.
Hmm.
STIFs, which was
Financial
software testing
services.
in financial services. Twist, the Toronto workshop on software testing. Doot, I think, is still going on, which is the Dutch exploratory workshop.
You know what? I think
Um,
that actually still is going on. I think I saw
I
something
think
about
it's
that the other.
going on. If you want to know about that one, I think Hype Schutz is still involved in
Okay.
that. And if not, he would know who. Elizabeth Zagrobo was that one. Peter Simon Schreiber is usually the facilitator of that one. Anyway, all of these workshops, but you're right, they seem to have dwindled
Yeah.
quite substantially. Conferences that I go to that I like, the Romanian Quality Connect, the first iteration of that is going to be in May. It's replacing Romanian Testing
I was gonna say because the only
Conference.
Romanian testing conference was a fantastic conference. Is it run by the same guys?
One of them.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into why, but the
Don't
name had
care.
to change. Uh, Agile Testing Days. I totally love Agile Testing Days and the conference for the Association of Software Testing, which was amazing in Salt Lake City this year.
Yeah.
Next year, oh, I don't think they've announced it, but
I need to
let's
get back to
say
one of those.
I hear it's going to be close to where I live,
Yeah.
and um, but if you want to find out where I live, I guess you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Okay.
Anyway, but
Right. So, but what are you working on these days? Where are you going to be out and about anywhere? Where can people find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place. If you just look for Paul Holland software testing, you will probably find me. I don't have a beard as my LinkedIn picture. I am in Cocoa Beach. Testing Thoughts is my company name. I do have a web page that's totally horrible and has archaic blog posts in it. And by archaic, don't think I've added a blog post in over 8 years.
So you're
But
keeping it fresh.
it's totally fresh. It amazes me every time I check on the stats that people still actually are visiting it at least occasionally. But that's just testingthoughts.com.
Okay.
My
I'll put
email
the
address
links
is
in the yeah, I'll put
paul
all
at
the links in this.
testingthoughts.com.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, that's how to get hold of me. I
In the
was
book.
going to be at Agile Testing Days, but my tutorial didn't have the numbers when they had to make the decision. I was one person short.
No.
Vincent Vinen and I were going to be doing a robot framework test assisted testing.
No.
It's a great workshop. Kim Filiatro and I did it at Cast, and it was
Okay.
very, very well received. So I was disappointed that I'm not going to be at Agile Testing Days.
Because I'm
Um,
gonna be I'll be there this year. So
I
that's
know you're never there when I'm there. I've been there like 8 straight years, and you've never showed. Oh no, that's not true. You were there once when the wonderful ladies from Pakistan were there, but
They were from they were Afghans and
Afghanistan. That's what I
I've been
meant
to
to say.
Agile
Sorry.
Testing Days quite a few times. There was the one year I was going to be there that you were going to be there, and then I got ill and couldn't
Yeah,
go.
and then I think you
I
went
got
once
COVID,
like
I
three
think.
years ago, and I had COVID. So
Yes,
there we
yeah,
go.
we missed each other for 2 years. So anyway, look, man, it was great catching up with you and talking and I'll drop all the links to all the stuff we talked about in the book as well. The Rapid Software Testing book, you got a chapter in that.
Buy the book, be
Buy the
the
book.
book, read the book. The more people who are good at testing, the better the industry will be.
Agreed. So anyway, mate, it was good catching up, and we will speak soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, cheers.